Well, Merry Christmas. As we get closer, I start thinking about what am I gonna have for the big meals, whether it's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whenever you're having your special occasion. I like things that seem festive and like they're extra special and good, but also that can go together pretty quick. And that's what these festive party potatoes really are. They're a really simple potato because it kind of, one, I don't like when a potato casserole does not use real potatoes, because yeah, you can tell the difference and you know what I mean. So we're using real potatoes, but you know what? We're gonna use a smashed mashed potato with the skin on. It makes it easier, it adds interest, but we're using red potatoes, which have a really thin skin, and I think it's delicious to add them in. So what I'm doing is chopping up my potatoes first so I can get them cooking. And I'm kind of just doing them in even sizes so they cook kind of at the same rate. And that's kind of what is important here. And now, usually what we would be doing if it was, say, a mashed potato casserole of sorts, we would be having to peel them all, which, you know what, takes a lot of time. Now, if you follow my other videos, any time of the year, I'm usually a big proponent and have a soapbox about keeping the peel on things, whether it's winter squash or different things. So many of them, once they're cooked, once they're roasted, they have great things to them, and they add fiber, they have nutrients in them, so I think it's great to leave them on. And this kind of goes along with the look of the overall finished potatoes, and that's what I love. It has some great interest to it. And the red is just kind of a prettier one to look at, and with that thinner skin just makes it better. So that's all the potatoes, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring them over to the stove, and we're gonna get water on them, because we wanna cook them. So it's pretty simple to cover them slightly with some water, get it to not splash everywhere, bring it up, we're gonna bring it up to a boil and let them cook. And that's kind of what's important here. I always like and think that I just want to get everything going kind of at once. You could make these ahead of time, the morning up, put them in the fridge, and that's the best part here. So once they're covered with water, which they are, we're gonna turn it off, we're gonna let it come to a boil, and we're gonna talk about the flavorings with this, because that's the fun part. So for this, we want to have a lot of great flavorings that go into it. So I'm of course melting butter on the stove, and in that we're gonna cook, to start with, leeks. Now the reason I'm choosing leeks over an onion, leek has, I would say, a sweeter, lighter flavor. It isn't as astringent or strong, and that's what I love about it. But when you have a leek, you always want to take it home, cut off any of the really thick green parts, slice it down the middle, and when you rinse it and wash it, you need to open it up because they are growing in really sandy, dirty kind of soil, and it gets through all those layers. So what I've done is really opened it up already, as you can see, and that's gonna make sure that it's clean, and I have it all cleaned up, ready to go. So now we can just talk about the chopping of it, which I like to chop them right here, kind of on the bias across. And what this is gonna do is kind of open it all up and gonna give us these little ribbons of leeks. But it's not just leeks here. We're gonna make sure that they're cooked well, and we're gonna cook them in the butter. So we're cooking in the butter because instead of just adding butter right into kind of our mashed potato as we're making them, we're gonna let the leeks cook in it so all those flavors really work together. And that's what I love about this, is all these different flavors that we're gonna have. And the really thing is, if you're not used to cooking or using leeks, try them once. You're gonna kind of fall in love with them because they have a little bit more of an earthy flavor than the onion, and I think they just really add something. So now they're all chopped up, we're gonna put them right into my melted butter, and we're gonna hear a little bit of a sizzle, which is what you want, but you don't want them to burn. So you're getting just that nice, kind of light sizzle on them, kind of a nice light saute, and that's exactly what we're wanting here. So we're gonna let those cook for a little bit, and while they're cooking, I always make sure to season all my layers. So while they're cooking in the butter, I'm gonna add some salt. It's gonna help, one, the leeks to break down, release their natural water, but also gonna make sure that they're seasoned all along the way. So I'm gonna let those cook. We're gonna add then a few other delicious flavorings once they start kind of cooking down, and this is gonna build the best potatoes. While the leeks are really kind of sweating down and cooking, they're just beginning to get a little bit of color on them, which I like. I'm gonna get ready some garlic. Now, I grow my own garlic, so I have massive, sometimes, cloves. So I'm using one large clove here. Just gonna smash it up a little bit. And then, guys, yeah, it did. Did you see that? It flew some of it away. Sometimes I try to act like it doesn't, but guys, you're gonna see everything real. It fell on the floor and it flew away. But sometimes you see that in these videos. So I'm gonna chop up the garlic. And what we like here is these flavors are all strong, but they're playing together really well because we are adding in this wonderful garlic, super fragrant. If you haven't grown garlic at home and you have space, I think you should try it. But then we're also gonna add in some rosemary. There's gonna be Parmesan with these. These to me really are the ultimate the ultimate like holiday potato. They're festive. They have those great flavors that you want kind of around the holidays, but they're also honestly kind of easy in the sense that you can make them a day or two before, keep them in the fridge and heat them up. So we're gonna add the garlic right there into the leeks, and then we have some rosemary. Now we're gonna use rosemary a couple different times, but for this time, just so it doesn't get kind of brown and gross, we're gonna add in just a sprig and let it kind of cook in that and really flavor this mixture of the butter, the leeks, the garlic. I mean, look how delicious that looks. You can tell they're really just beginning to sweat down and get some color on them, adding tons of flavor. So now we're gonna add that garlic, let that really bring out. When this is done, we're gonna pull it off, let it just kind of cool down a little bit. We're gonna let the potatoes finish cooking and we'll bring it all together. My potatoes are finished cooking, and now we just wanna drain them. You could use a strainer, you could do whatever you're comfortable with. You know, as you can see, I don't like to dirty things I don't have to. So I will just strain them with the lid, and you can see right there, all of that. Now, if you are gonna make maybe some cinnamon rolls for Christmas or something, potato water is great to save because it has that starchiness to it. So it's great for bread making. Even if you're gonna do other things with it, it's great for gravy too if you don't have a good stock or broth or drippings. So I'm gonna make sure to get them as dry as I can. Now, one trick I always like is to put them back on. The burner doesn't even need to be on, but that residual heat as they're sitting here is just gonna kind of get off the rest of that steam. Make sure they're kind of dry, but we're not making traditional mashed potatoes. So I'm gonna do that here for a few seconds, but you can see how good they're breaking down already. And that's what you want. You want them to really break down and really start just wanting to mash. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring them over with my mismatched pot holders. And now what we have is all the components here to make them really good. I'm gonna start by just taking a masher. Now, when you're making mashed potatoes for just mashed potatoes and you want fluffy, beautiful mashed potatoes, you're gonna use maybe a ricer, some type of mixer. But here what we're doing is just kind of giving it that great texture. So I'm using a hand masher. We're going back, guys. Basics, you don't need to get out any equipment. And what I'm doing is just making sure to kind of get out all the major lumps. I'm kind of just breaking down all these potatoes. And what I love about this is you're left with seeing that beautiful texture of those skins. And I think that adds just like a great component to this. And what is nice is it's a time saver, yes, but it kind of has like that festive quality to it of something extra that's added in there. So I'm gonna keep mashing these up, and while I'm doing that, you can see I'm really making sure to break them all down. The ones on the bottom, the ones on top, and they're really starting to pull together. So it's easier to do this before you add too many of the other components here, because that way you can see just the potatoes. So I'm gonna keep mashing them a little bit, and we're gonna add in some really good things. So here I have room temperature sour cream and cream cheese. Now you wanna do room temperature because even though potatoes are hot, you wanna make sure they break down into the potatoes as quickly as they can. So room temperature of both these items is really gonna help that happen. And we're gonna put them in there. And what this is doing is, one, it really stabilizes mashed potatoes. You know how mashed potatoes on their own can get kind of dry quickly and don't stay as fluffy. Well, adding these in, it's kind of a foolproof way to make sure that you stay with these beautiful, almost creamy mashed potatoes, but then also we're adding all of that flavor into these. So I wanna just mash in all that cream cheese, and since it was at room temperature, you can see how quickly the sour cream and the cream cheese are really just working into these potatoes. Like obviously here, when we have all these extra delicious items, we don't have these on a weeknight basis. So that's what we do to me around the holidays, around special occasions, is we add in these things and we enjoy them once in a while. And you can see here how this is kind of starting to look just like a mashed potato with all that texture and all that beauty of the skins. So to that, I'm gonna make sure I have my leeks here. I'm gonna pull out, see how it kind of got limp? It's not the best. So I pulled out the rosemary there. A few pieces are okay, but what I'm gonna also do is once I add in the leeks and any of that residual butter, remember, it's a good way just to add in the extra melted butter. And make sure you get it all in there. I don't like to leave it in there, and I don't like even to cut it down for these videos. I want you to see that I'm gonna add it in there. But I also like to chop a little bit of the fresh rosemary. It kind of gives you those different flavor nuances. You get the hit of that cooked rosemary that just kind of gave it that flavor in steeping with that butter and garlic. But then I also want kind of a good hit of it in the potatoes themselves. So I'm gonna chop some up here, make sure to add it in there. It also adds great color. Look at the beauty of that. This is a great time too to make sure you season the potatoes well. We only seasoned the leeks, but we did not season all these potatoes, and that's a lot of pounds of potatoes. So potatoes need that salt. We're gonna add in some pepper, just a good fresh grind on it, because I wanna make sure you taste the pepper. I think pepper and like a good mashed potato, there's nothing like it. So we're gonna add that in there, kind of start mixing that in again. And then the final component of these that to me just really, it brings all these flavors together with the leeks, the garlic, the rosemary, is of course fresh parm. Now, this is completely different than the dried stuff. And I'm using a thick grater on this, but it's gonna melt into it. But this is a block of parm, as opposed to the bottle that has the powdered parm. It's kind of completely different. So this is actually gonna add that delicious kind of salty, funky Parmesan flavor. And that's really what I want here. And what's great about parm, a little goes a long way. You don't have to use a huge block for it, because one, it is pricey. So you just wanna add enough that you really get that flavor. It also adds some seasoning, some salt, so it kind of complements all the others. Once you get that in there, you can kind of just stir it around. At this point, we've mashed it really well. You can see that. What we're gonna do now though is just take our spatula here and just make sure we mix everything together. And we get that parm in there. Now see, as you can see, the skins, while it's kind of an interesting factor, it just adds a great texture to it. And I think it's kind of pretty. So you have this beautiful mashed potato that really is ready to go. You could eat it at this point, but I think since it's the holidays, and what's great is this can be made and held, like I said, in the fridge. We're gonna put it here into a baking dish. And at that point, you could let it cool off and then put it right into your fridge, or you could just right away top it with some more fresh cheese, put it in the oven, and keep it warm and kind of just bake that cheese on top, and that's gonna just finish these off and make them holiday ready. So I'm gonna finish smoothing these out, putting them in, and we're gonna try it soon. I'm just pulling them out of the oven. So we put them in the pan, and then we'll shredded a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top. Just dramatic effect. This is really just gilding the lily. And you can see as long as they're warm through and they're hot, everything was cooked and ready. So you just wanna make sure everything kind of goes together. So I have a little bit of fresh rosemary. It adds a sprinkling of green and adds just kind of that festive, delicious fragrance. And kind of what I love is, as the potatoes and cheese are warm, it heats up all those elements of the rosemary and you really smell it, and that's what I love. So then the big thing is, someone's gotta taste them. I know, it's a hard job, it is, but I got to, because they just smell so good. This is what I love. You see all those components, you see the skin, but it goes together with the browning of the cheese and the leeks. They're hot. There's nothing to say about these other than like, these are the best holiday potatoes any time of the year. They're extremely festive because you get the strong hits of rosemary, that Parmesan cheese, the really balanced leeks that almost have a sweetness with the butter, and then that mashed potato, which comes out extremely smooth. They're cooked well, the skin's kind of cooked down too and are soft, but add just like a hint of texture, which I like. It's a delicious potato. And it's one that I think will just go with any type of wonderful meal you're gonna have around this season. That's what's great about these. These can be used really any time of the year. Imagine these at Easter. Imagine these at other like Thanksgiving holidays. Anytime, these are your potato to enjoy because they really are that good. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you make potatoes because it's worth it. Especially you get that real delicious potato-ness. These aren't out of a box. They aren't out of a can. They're not powdered. They're good. I also hope you share this video around. Yes, it helps me a lot, but it helps everyone else see good, delicious food is doable and easy to make at home. If I can do it, everyone can do it, and it will make the holiday season better to have great food. It makes us all happy. So share it around, check my website, wiseguy.com for this recipe, all my other recipes, Holiday Central right on there. And until next time, make some potatoes and enjoy them. I mean, I can tell you're gonna enjoy these.